Hey everybody, I'm Adam, and this is Think Club. So in this video, I want to lay out what I perceive as one of the weakest arguments that the anti-theists have, and I want to lay it out from a secular perspective. A lot of times I feel like these arguments should be had from a secular perspective because that is the easiest way to avoid conflict between different faiths, between different belief systems, and between people with no belief system at all, just atheists. Now, Sam Harris and other anti-theist types have said many times that they recognize differences in belief systems. I think Sam Harris constantly refers to Jainism, and if the world was full of Jains, then he wouldn't have a problem with religion. So he makes the concession that different religions have different effects on society, and I agree with him there. But then he tends to conflate the two largest faiths, the two largest belief systems, Christianity and Islam. He tends to see them interchangeably or argue as if they are interchangeable, and I don't think that's fair. If you wanted to talk about injuries in sports, there's a big hubbub about concussions, okay? Concussions cause all of this damage to human beings that we didn't really think was a big deal before. Now it turns out maybe it's a bigger deal than we thought. But if you wanted to say, okay, concussions are this huge problem, there are certain sports that produce concussions. Going after all sports because of concussions makes absolutely no sense at all. You wouldn't go after golf because of concussions. You'd go after boxing, you'd go after football. So when there are certain problems within different faiths, it seems wrong to me that these anti-theists conflate problems with all faiths. And certain faiths are going to produce certain amount of problems and certain amount of benefits, right? And these faiths evolved over time. You have to look at them as if faith A is going to produce 10 benefits and 4 problems, okay? And faith B is going to produce 20 benefits and 19 problems. So there's different variables for each faith. So conflating the faiths really takes a level of detail out of the problem that we're looking at. And I see a lot of that going on between Christianity and Islam. Another aspect to the problem that I often see overlooked is the fact that society, good societies like Western society, something that functions well, not the best, obviously. There are problems with Western society, and we're always trying to improve things, right? But societies that function relatively well, with low crime, low violence, people having an acceptable amount of opportunity or an abundant amount of opportunity even. Those societies that function well because of the behaviors of the people embedded in that society. Those behaviors produce a certain amount of functionality to the society, right? Now, a lot of people look at the problem of religion. Well, it's very easy to point out the problems of religion. A lot of times the anti-theists want to ignore the benefits of religion because they just don't like religion. But an impartial person is going to do a cost-benefit analysis on it. You can study religion and say, hey, what does religion do to society? Or you can study the behaviors that are taking place in society empirically. You can observe these behaviors and say, these behaviors are happening. We don't necessarily know why they are happening. We're not going to attribute a cause to them just yet because we want to kind of survey what the behaviors are. And this has been done. Social scientists have done this, and they have identified 3 various cultures that are around the world now. And I want to go through 2 of those cultures here because when I see the conflation of Christianity and Islam in the anti-theist debate, I often think that, okay, what really is going on here is the conflation of what sociologists call an honor culture and a dignity culture. In the Middle East, they have what we would call an honor culture. And in the West, we have what was called a dignity culture. And a lot of our benefits that we see and acknowledge in our modern society society are a result of a transition from an honor culture, which is effectively, the Wild West, a very violent culture, to a dignity culture, which is a less violent culture, or a much less violent culture. So I got this information from a blog post based on the work of Campbell and Manning. They're two sociologists who have studied what people are calling victimhood culture now, but they lay out the basics of honor culture and dignity culture too. So I just went through and I kind of bullet pointed what an honor culture is. In an honor culture, status is primarily based on public opinion. Your status is a result of how people view you, and that status is pinned to physical bravery, and violence tends to prevail in these societies. So when I look at the Middle East, I think, yeah, that's an honor culture right there. In addition to this, honor cultures have people with an unwillingness to be dominated by anyone. They are expected to engage in violent retaliation against anyone who offends them. Failure to fight back is seen as a moral failing. Reputations must be defended aggressively, violently. People in an honor culture shun reliance on law and order and outside authority. They don't want to be dominated by anyone, and they refuse to lower their status by depending on others to handle their affairs. Now, when I think of the Middle East, I think of honor cultures. I mean, they have something called honor killings. I don't know how you could get closer to an honor culture. So cultures of honor tend to arise in places where legal authority is weak or non-existent, and where a reputation for toughness is perhaps the only effective deterrent against predation or attack. So, and that is from Cooney, 1998, and Ling and Cohen, 2011. They have a citation in the blog post. So if you want to look it up there, you can get some more information about it. But these honor cultures, they are a product of the environment. It's very much an evolutionary process. If you live in a place where law and order is non-existent, where the government could care less if people take advantage of you, you are going to need to display a level of violence, a level of personal bravery, a unwillingness to be put upon, or you will be preyed upon. So it is a result of the environment. It should be noted that this kind of honor culture also emerges, however you want to call it, in prison environment, where you are forced to display your violent behavior or you will be preyed upon. Turning to the authorities in a prison is not a good route to maintain your life. So these cultures are a product of the environment as much as they are a product of the cultural apparatus, the external cultural belief system that transforms them. How much that culture can transform them is an open and interesting question as well. I'm not necessarily sure that we have good data on that. Anti-theists like to believe that the belief system is driving everything, that the belief system is the be-all and end-all to human behavior, but I don't think that's accurate at all. I think it's physical environment first, then social environment, and then belief system. Now, a dignity culture has arisen in the West here because we have a different environment. It's a different environment. That behavior does not facilitate the kind of environment where we have much more opportunity, which is a dignity culture. Now, as I said before, the whole idea of Western civilization could be described as a transition from honor culture, which is the old school, which is the culture that is the first culture to evolve in human beings, to a dignity culture, which is a more advanced culture. So the bullet points I have for dignity culture are, it's a prevailing culture in the modern West. It's nearly exactly the opposite of an honor culture. People are said to have an inherent dignity, an inherent self-worth that cannot be alienated by others. Status exists independently of what others think. Public reputation is less important. Insults are no longer a way of establishing or destroying a person's reputation. It is commendable to have a thick skin and to shrug off slights and insults. Children in dignity cultures are taught some version of sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. And this is an idea that would be alien to an honor culture, because in an honor culture, when someone insults you, you got to go beat their ass. Intolerable conflicts are settled by nonviolent actions as a rule rule of thumb. In severe conflicts, people turn to third parties to settle their disputes: police, courts, Congress. People cultivate an ethic of restraint and toleration. People condemn the use of the authorities for frivolous insults. And people are expected to tolerate serious but accidental injuries. We recognize that accidents happen. You're not going to lose your status in the eyes of the community because you have not responded violently to some accident. So the growth of law and order and mostly fair, though imperfect, legal institutions has facilitated the rise of dignity cultures and largely supplanted honor cultures among Western, middle, and upper classes. So these two cultures are very, very different. And the argument I see being made by people like Jordan Peterson and Douglas Murray is that Christianity has evolved to facilitate the kind of behaviors that are useful in a dignity culture, that very much create a dignity culture. Now, I don't know much about Islam, so I don't know that Islam is compatible with a dignity culture, because I don't know if Islam can facilitate the kind of behaviors that are necessary to sustain a dignity culture, to create a dignity culture. So we have to examine these religions, these behaviors that are encouraged and created by these different religious institutions in the context of these various cultures. If we want to live in a dignity culture, Christianity could be very useful in creating that dignity culture. Islam may not be as useful in creating that dignity culture. If we want to live in an honor culture, which I don't think I want to live in an honor culture, I don't recommend it, then there's this different set of behaviors that you want to elicit by your belief system. And your belief system is going to either work towards those behaviors or work against those behaviors. So I just wanted to lay this out because I think there is a huge gaping inconsistency in this failure to recognize the difference, the huge differences in Islam and Christianity. So many of the arguments that I hear anti-theists make, the Sam Harris types, the Matt Dillahunty types, don't seem to draw any causal connection between this belief that believing things without evidence, believing things on flimsy evidence, elicits the kind of behaviors that are dangerous to a dignity culture, which ultimately I think is what they're fighting for. They connect Christianity and Islam based on the fact that both belief systems, in fact, all belief systems, tend to believe things on bad evidence, as they would say. And that belief on bad evidence is the root of a lot of these problems that they perceive. But I don't understand the causal connection there, because believing things, regardless of the evidence, will elicit certain behaviors, and it's those behaviors that create these various cultures. They create the dignity culture or the honor culture. So the causal connection seems weak. And I just think if you're debating anti-theists, the next level of argumentation is to figure out what exactly they think the causal connection is between this believing things on bad evidence and these pro-social behaviors that we can point out. We can say these are pro-social behaviors. This list of behaviors creates the kind of culture that we feel is the most conducive to productivity and peace, in effect. How do you get that culture from a different belief system? And is it imperative that that belief system is based on factual reality, as they like to say? So these are just some ideas that I had. I'm curious what you guys think, as usual. You can let me know in the comments below, and maybe I'll make another video expanding upon this if it's an interesting topic.
Well, first of all, if you don't have a purpose, it isn't that your life becomes neutral in a meaningless sense. It's that your life becomes characterized by unbearable suffering. Because the baseline condition of life is something like unbearable suffering.